What if I told you that the greatest act of cultural destruction in human history was not called a genocide? It was called a discovery, and the men who carried it out were given statues, national holidays, and their names written across entire continents. Today, we are going to talk about what Spain actually did to the greatest civilizations in the Western Hemisphere. Not the version taught in most classrooms. Not the version that begins with a heroic sailor and ends with a new world found. The real version. The one that begins with empires so sophisticated they left European explorers speechless, and ends with those same empires reduced to rubble, their knowledge burned, their people enslaved, and their gods replaced at sword point. This is not just the story of conquest. It is the story of how the world learned to call destruction by a gentler name. So sit back, because what you are about to discover will permanently change how you read every history book that uses the word discovery. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us which other forgotten civilizations you want us to investigate. Let's dive in.
Historians of mystery. Imagine a city larger than any in Europe. A city of 200,000 people built on a lake, connected to the mainland by massive causeways, filled with floating gardens, vast markets, towering temples, and a system of governance so sophisticated it administered millions of people across hundreds of miles. That city was Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. And when the Spanish arrived in 1519, the soldiers who first saw it could not find words to describe it. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, a soldier who marched with Hernán Cortés, wrote in his memoirs that the sight of the city left them speechless. That it seemed like something from a dream, that nothing they had seen in Spain or anywhere in Europe compared to it. And Tenochtitlan was not alone. To the south, in the Andes Mountains of what is now Peru, the Inca Empire stretched across 2.5 million square kilometers, making it the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas. It administered a population of up to 12 million people through a road network of 40,000 kilometers. Longer than the Roman road system at its peak, without the use of a wheel, iron tools, or a written language. The Inca communicated through a system of knotted strings called quipus, administered food distribution across thousands of miles, and built stone structures so precisely fitted that a knife blade cannot be inserted between the stones to this day. Further north and south, the Maya had developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the ancient world, an advanced astronomical calendar more accurate than the one used in Europe at the time, and a mathematical system that independently invented the concept of zero. These were not primitive peoples waiting to be civilized. These were civilizations at the height of their power, their knowledge, and their sophistication. And the Spanish arrived, and everything ended. To understand what Spain did, we must first understand how they did it. Because the conquest of two of the greatest empires in the Western Hemisphere was not achieved through military superiority alone. It was achieved through a combination of factors so precise in their devastation that they seem almost calculated by history itself. The first and most lethal was disease. When the Spanish arrived in the Americas, they brought with them smallpox, measles, influenza, and dozens of other pathogens to which the indigenous populations had zero immunity. The results were catastrophic beyond any modern comprehension. In some regions, between 50 and 90% of the entire population died within a century of contact. Not from swords, not from battles, from viruses that the Spanish did not even know they were carrying. Entire cities emptied. Entire civilizations lost the majority of their people before a single battle had been fought. The Aztec Empire was fighting a smallpox epidemic at the same moment it was fighting Cortés. The two catastrophes arrived together. But disease alone did not destroy these civilizations. What destroyed them was what came after. Hernán Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico in 1519 with 500 soldiers, 16 horses, and a plan that was either brilliant or insane, depending on which side of history you stand on. He burned his own ships. Not metaphorically, literally. He burned the fleet that had brought him to the Americas so that his men had no option but to conquer or die. What followed was a campaign of extraordinary military cunning and breathtaking brutality. Cortés forged alliances with indigenous peoples who resented Aztec rule, turning the empire's own subjects against it. He used psychological warfare, manipulation, and a Spanish cannon at precisely the right moment to create terror. And when the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II received him with hospitality and gifts, Cortés repaid that hospitality by taking him hostage. The fall of Tenochtitlan in 1521 was not a clean military victory. It was a siege. The Spanish and their indigenous allies cut off the city's water supply, its food supply, and its causeways. The city that had seemed like something from a dream was systematically starved and bombarded until it submitted. What remained after the siege was not a conquered city. It was a ruin. Cortés ordered Tenochtitlan demolished. Every temple, every palace, every structure of significance was torn down. On top of the rubble of the greatest city in the Americas, the Spanish built Mexico City. The New World was built literally on top of the old one. In South America, the story followed a similar arc of calculated destruction. Francisco Pizarro arrived in Peru in 1532 with 168 soldiers and a strategy so audacious it defies belief. He captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa at a meeting that had been arranged under the premise of peaceful negotiation. Atahualpa, who arrived with thousands of attendants and no weapons expecting a diplomatic encounter, was seized in a sudden ambush. The Inca forces, paralyzed by the capture of their divine ruler, did not know how to respond. The ransom Atahualpa offered to secure his release was staggering. A room filled with gold, another filled twice over with silver. Pizarro accepted the ransom, and then executed Atahualpa anyway. The Inca Empire, which had survived for centuries, collapsed not from military defeat, but from the removal of its divine center in a single afternoon. But the physical conquest was only the beginning of the destruction. What followed was a systematic cultural annihilation that the world has still not fully reckoned with. The Spanish burned books, not occasionally, systematically. Diego de Landa, a Franciscan friar in the Yucatan, burned virtually every Maya codex he could find in 1562, describing the books as works of the devil. Of the thousands of Maya codices that existed at the time of contact, only 4 survived. 4. The accumulated astronomical knowledge, the historical records, the mathematical achievements, the poetry, the science, the memory of an entire civilization, reduced to ash in a single act of religious certainty. The equivalent of burning the Library of Alexandria. Except it happened not once, but repeatedly across the Americas, as Spanish missionaries systematically destroyed every written record of every civilization they encountered. The temples were demolished. The gold was melted down and sent to Spain, destroying irreplaceable works of art to fill treasury coffers. The priests were killed or converted. The gods were replaced. And then came the encomienda system, the mechanism through which Spain institutionalized the exploitation of the surviving population. Indigenous people were assigned to Spanish colonists as laborers. In theory, they were to be paid and converted to Christianity. In practice, they were worked to death in mines and on plantations at a rate that continued the population collapse begun by disease. The silver mines of Potosí in modern Bolivia, which funded the Spanish Empire for 2 centuries, were worked by forced indigenous labor under conditions so brutal that an estimated 8 million people died in them. The mountain at Potosí became known as the mountain that eats men. The question that history must eventually answer is this. Why do we call this the Age of Discovery? What exactly was discovered? The people of the Americas had been there for thousands of years. They had built cities, developed writing systems, mapped the stars, engineered agricultural systems, created art, music, poetry, and philosophy. They did not need to be discovered. They needed to be left alone. The word discovery belongs to the perspective of the person arriving. It erases entirely the perspective of the people who were already there. And the choice to keep using that word, 200 years after scholars began questioning it, is itself a political act. The death toll of the Spanish conquest of the Americas remains one of the most debated and devastating statistics in human history. Conservative estimates suggest that the indigenous population of the Americas fell from approximately 60 million at the time of contact to fewer than 6 million within a century. A 90% collapse, not from one cause, but from the combination of disease, warfare, forced labor, famine, and the psychological devastation of having every element of your civilization systematically dismantled. It is a number so large it resists comprehension, and yet it remains largely absent from the way the conquest is taught in most of the world. Spain did not destroy the greatest civilizations in the Americas because they were evil in some simple, cartoonish way. They did it because they were certain that their God was the only God, certain that their civilization was the highest form of human achievement, certain that what they were doing was not destruction, but salvation. And that certainty, the absolute unquestioned belief that you are right and therefore whatever you do is justified, is the most dangerous force in human history. More dangerous than any weapon, more destructive than any army, because it does not need to hate its victims. It simply needs to be unable to see them. What was lost in the Americas between 1492 and the end of the 16th century was not simply the political power of two empires. What was lost was irreplaceable. Languages that will never be spoken again. Knowledge systems that will never be recovered. Ways of understanding the cosmos, the body, the earth, and the human community that existed nowhere else in the world and were destroyed before they could be recorded. The world is poorer for their absence in ways we cannot even fully measure because we do not know what we lost. We only know that we lost it. That is not a discovery. That is a catastrophe. And it is long past time we called it by its right name. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video and are passionate about this kind of content, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos and can discover more fascinating stories. See you in the next video.